Them Days in Grenada, the oral version, part 2. Take a little walk with me. And yes, feel free to add your story, because I did not live in all parts of Grenada. So you have stories that I cannot tell. So I want to hear your stories also. And also remember, Marcus Garvey once said that a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Marcus Garvey. And I often remark that when the Americans travel, when the Japanese travel, when the Chinese travel, they walk with the history books. So every Chinese settling Grenada, be sure, boy, they're going to tell you about the Ming dynasty. They're going to tell you about that. So let's begin the walk. I remember the bakers, a baker called Prax and Specky. Well, add your bakers. And I used to listen to the way Specky pronounced the word current roll. I don't know if he was from Barbados, but the way he said current roll, the manner in which he said it, it sounded as if he was using a popular bad word, obscene language, or parents did not like to hear. There was a man called Doc Mitchell, not Keith Mitchell, Doc Mitchell, was a politician. And I remember him as well as Mr. R.C.P. Moore, who was one of the Speaker of the House. And some of you may find that the names I'm calling here might be related to you. So it's good to know about your family. A man called Mr. Sebot Dikoto. He made mattresses near the Arms House. You ever heard of the Arms House? The Arms House. People used to go to the Arms House and feed those who were in desperate need of food, doing their good work. Who remembers Father Emmanuel? We can't let these people fade away. Father Emmanuel taught the youth how to play steel pan. And there was a time in Grenada when parents did not want the children to play the steel pan. In fact, I often say that people bawl when Brother Brough played the pan in the Catholic Cathedral. What the hell the world coming to, boy? And even Trinidad, there was a calypso. Who ever thought that the day would reach when steel band music will play while the Reverend preach? But time changes. They always change. The only constant is change. And so what you see happened or saw happened yesterday, something different could happen today and in the future. But back to Father Emmanuel. He was a dedicated man, dedicated and a talented musician, panist, playing the steel pan. I must say, it's a good idea for us to remember our people. I'm telling you all of this not for name or fame or to get some award or something. I just do it from my heart, you know. A woman called Nen Kate, she religiously lit the candles in the Catholic Cathedral. You know, Grenadians are such wonderful people. We often say that, okay, man, bad people are wrong. Yes, you'll find that, but they are good, dedicated people. Like Nen Kate religiously lit the candles in the Catholic Cathedral. There was a woman called Miss Eve. She sold Nut Sweetie near Mother Rose School. Who remembers Nut Sweetie? Mr. Morissette and Cotty were barbers. My friend Reds was a good barber, very good. Clarence, very good barber. school children used to crack jokes on Mr. Morissette. You know Mr. Morissette? He always said. But I don't know what they mean by that. Don't ask me. A man called Mr. Sylvester. Very, very good photographer. It seemed that those Sylvesters are always good in photography. Tom Millie from Tyrrell Street, now called Hobart Blaze Street. Famous woman, famous for her hot cross buns at Easter time. And she also brought food to feed the people at the almshouse already mentioned. So it was a wonderful thing that Grenadians were noted for doing such kind acts. And some still do, I must say that. Look at all the outpouring when Hurricane Beryl struck Carriacou. Yes, there are good people among us. And we must never let greed displace love and charity. Are you listening? Are you listening? Mammy May, she sold an appetizing fish cake in River Road. There's a Bajan guy boy, he had that fish cake once, and he said, Ma, if you never eat Mammy May's fish cake, Ma, you never eat yet. What? Grenadians could cook. A man called Mr. Bartholomew on St. John Street sold a most pleasing fonte. I mentioned fonte a couple times on Facebook, and I had to explain to the young ones what a fonte was or is. It's actually a ginger cake. Very nice. A long time I haven't tasted a fonte. When I go to Grenada, I'm going to look around and see if I get a fonte. So I was surprised that when I mentioned it, that yes, many people didn't know what I was talking about. I wouldn't say nobody. So the importance of passing down the information so that our children would know and not have to ask questions. Yes, it was and is a ginger cake. Now, a woman called Miss Doris, she sold blood pudding. And a woman called Miss Chase also sold blood pudding at the bottom of St. John Street. My mother, Georgina the Riggs, made tamarind balls and other goodies, sugar cakes, stuffed fudge. Some people ask what is stuffed fudge. Well, it's a fudge, actually. But you have the sugar cake in the inside and covered by a coating of the fudge, the cocoa, made from the cocoa. Marubs, rest in peace, also made and sold tamarind balls. And who can forget Miss Gertie on the carronage on the wharf? Miss Gertie Nigger Boy Sweetie. Now that's its name, eh? I saying it just said it was. You see, history can say something different. That was the name of the sweetie, Nigger Boy Sweetie. And she made it on the carronage. Certainly a great palate pleaser. Gratifying the palate. But you sucking that for hours and the thing wasn't done. It wasn't done at all. Lasted for hours in the mouth. Miss Lena on Tyrrell Street sold a number of items. God bless her soul. Yes, our people knew the word industrious. Because you had old man rowing what we call a oaring boat. We always change up thing, a rowing boat, oaring boat across the carronage to earn his daily bread. I wrote a poem about that. I think it is in my third book, the book of poetry that I have. So he used to row to earn his daily bread. You see, many Grenadians believe in earning and making their money the old-fashioned way, by honest, hard work. A few of them ain't believe that at all. I ain't calling names. And then there's a guy called Preacher Man, a man called Preacher Man, collected stamps to sell to the tourists. In those days, young boys were flogged for bombing tourists, that's begging the tourists. And they used to go out and dive. They used to leave Melville Street area and dive, swim way out to the tourist boat out there, and they were good swimmers. And the tourists would throw money into the sea and coins, and they would dive and so on. But many parents didn't like that. They frowned on the idea of the children bombing tourists. What about music? You can't talk about music and about wakax, or a guy called Ratty and his trumpet, or the wonderful music played by a man we knew as Brooko, a music man from Birch Grove. How about the music director Switch Dikoto? You have to remember him also, and Mr. John Hood, talented musician. Lord Melody and Papi Tet sang calypsos in the drill yard. You know the drill yard, do you know why it was called a drill yard? I'll address that at some point. I'm sure Dr. Angus Martin probably spoke of that in his books. Now, I dream of hearing the songs. Many of those songs, I guess, were not saved or they were destroyed when the Americans bombed the radio station in Grenada. But songs like Papi Tet's Monica Kawi were on tape. And many of the songs we do not hear these days because I guess they were not preserved. The Mighty Dictator gave us a popular and enduring calypso, like one of the anthems. Grenada more than one probably. Brighter out of darkness, an enduring calypso. Brighter out of darkness. And there was a calypsonian who sang a song in the drill yard, and he was threatened with a lawsuit. Now that is always a contentious thing, because some calypsonians will be too plain and say things that would be in the realm of insults, and people might want to sue. But this calypsonian, I'm not going to call his name, he sang a song about pork, and pork have a lot of meanings, eh? Pork had a mustache on it. So a woman wanted to sue him because of that song. And what about the steel bands like Angel Harps that provided music, boy? Great, nice music, Comancherios and all these different steel orchestras. Call them steel orchestras. Uplift it and make it sound real good, as it should be. I remember as well, masked men like Awi, Brim, Patterson. Grenadians were creative, boy, real creative. They did not have to go to Trinidad and make costumes down there. Guys were good at wire bending. I'm talking about the time when we had our newspapers, already mentioned in a different piece, the Torchlight and the West Indians. I recall Fatty Derrick, and you call him that name, he never got annoyed. Mr. Clouden and Beak. What about the baby dancers, talented dancers? Pamela Douglas teaching all the moves. And what about Goat? And another guy called Malot. Very good limbo dancers. Very good. Leon Grube Mafu at that time were fixtures on the carronage. I remember the Undertakers. You know, you have to remember the Undertakers. Otway, Lacroix, Papa Hines, and Holas. Well, in them days, everybody settled for a coffin, a little coffin. You put in a coffin, they call it George. Put it down in the mud. These days, they have this huge mausoleum and so on. They put people in these fancy caskets to put them in there. Have you seen cemetery here lately? Look at those big structures that they have there. And in those days, too, the undertakers were very smart because some of them would go to the hospital and look to see who was sick and ask who your family were and, you know, take some information so in case they pass away, they were ahead of the game. And as far as having the right size coffin, that was never a problem, never a problem, because if it was too long for a coffin, they had a way of shortening you. Nobody wanted to look to see a foot anyway when the coffin was, the viewing time came. So when they shorten you, nobody would know. So they shorten you to fit the coffin. We can't leave out the shopkeepers. And again, this is where I appeal to you. Tell me some of the shopkeepers you knew all over Grenada. It's not about me. I said, I didn't live in all parts of Grenada, and this is not a research piece. So I'm talking about what I know, what I grew up with. And you have your information. So don't tell me I'm only talking about one section. I want you to put your pieces there. Add on. So the important shopkeepers I knew, like Mr. Selwyn Marshall on Table Street, now called Hubbard Blaze Street, already mentioned. A man called Mr. Rush, Mr. Jones, and Mr. Sandy Ford in the Grenville Street area. Noted for trusting customers, the habit of letting them have their goods until they were able to pay. Miss Linda Genesee of River Road was a shop owner. And before that, long before that, Paddy Riggs came back from fighting in the Second World War. Had a little shop on Grenville Street. He got blind afterwards, He went to the war with the British West Indian Regiment. Fortunate to make it back to Grenada with his brother-in-law, Jimmy Depredine. Mr. Sandy Ford, that man was a magnificent painter. Painted the names at the back of the wooden buses that were neatly parked in the market square. So nice a market used to look. People had pride, boy, proud of the environment. They did a lot to keep it nice and neat. Now, a friend of mine told me that Mr. Sandy Ford once stopped traffic in Trinidad. People stood in amazement and wondering how a man with no hands could paint signs so well. And today we have men with two good hands, big hard-back men, liming and begging. I recall a man called Tony, selling bread. I think he died, rest in peace. Bread and salami. And people sitting in Empire Cinema devouring it while movies like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or To Hell and Back, were in progress. I also recall people all over Grenada making fish pots and putting them in the sea to catch fish, to put food on their table. But sometimes there were people who got the fish pot and the fish before them. You'll always have people like that. I must mention George the Freighter shop opposite Bata Shoe Store. Miss Romaine had a shop on St. John Street. And one of the things you remember about Miss Romaine, having leeches in bottles in the shop there. And back then, Grenadians knew about the medical importance of leeches. You put the leeches in the sore spot and it will suck out any poison or whatever is in the skin. Mr. Williams and Mr. Comansin also had shops on St. John Street. One cannot underestimate, I've said it often and I feel free to repeat it again, one cannot underestimate the vital role played by people of Indian descent in energizing the economic fabric of Grenada. They did wonderful. Mr. Norbert Nayak had a big estate, yes, he's one of the bowlers. And then there were stores, as Ivan Wood, the Vienna store. You could buy shoes, could have bought shoes there at the Vienna store, or Gale's shoe store. Everybody's, Granby's, Amado, Frenchie store burnt at one point. Hollywood Fashion House, Ivan Wood, here I mentioned that, Charles of Grenada, all stores. And those who sold in the market included MacMay Philip. Miss Frederick was also famous for her roti. Balgobin had a restaurant in the town. And only were the famous Nutmeg Bar and restaurant and Rudolph's on the Wharf. Now, if you never had a nutmeg chicken snack back then, well, you miss out a great deal, because that was what you call a chicken snack. The delicious chicken snack at Nutmeg pleased many a palate. People enjoyed ice cream from Franco and Nick's. Pebbles came later. Mr. Maitland had a place near the tunnel, sold ice cream cone the conch shell. Some of us young boys, I go to primary school, St. George's RC Boys School. Can't afford the ice cream sometimes, so I bought a conch shell and eat it. Called a George. By the way, do you remember terms, our terms that are actually Grenadian terms? Called a George and a George Otway. Some people in some parts of the country call it a cowboy. It's a quick bath. Take a cowboy. When you have a little water, or you're afraid of water, go. You take a quick bath. Call it a cowboy. Or George Otway. There's a story about how the name George Otway came about. Well, I spoke about it already. I'm not going to beat it up here again. Mr. T.E. Noble Smith, that man used to leave his window open. So, well, television was not big in those times, you know. Very few people in the well-to-do had television. So Mr. T.E. Noble Smith used to leave his window open so people could look at certain American shows like Bonanza. Those shows were rare, and people were happy to look at them, you know. Give Jack his jacket. We always want to commend those who were helpful and did wonderful things. Now to the famous headmasters and teachers, J.W. Fletcher, Mr. Jerome Barnett, Mr. Lennox Phillip, Mr. Morris, Mr. Eli Peters up in Guelph, Mr. Duncan up in Sotez, Sir R.O. Palmer, who became a Governor General of Grenada, Mr. Hines of the famous Hindy School. Don't want to forget Daddy Bakes Batiste of the Grenada Boys Secondary School. Well, again, add your headmasters, you know, we can make this good. And he later became the headmaster of the Daddy Bakes, Mr. Batiste of the Anglican High School. I taught a class in Grenada before I left for the United States. In fact, I was teaching at the St. John's Christian Secondary School, and I had 3 classes running: an English class on the coronage, a history class in the college, it's a presentation Brothers College, and an English class I taught at Grenada School, at a school right on the beach. No more, it is not there right now. But just to mention something, not beating my chest, but there was a parent, actually a headmaster and headmistresses had a meeting at presentation Brothers College, and Daddy Biggs, he was in a room nearby where they had a meeting. He heard me teaching there, and right away he offered me a job to teach at the Anglican High School, but I told him I was leaving for the United States, and anyway, I was teaching at Shaper School, and I doubt I was going to move anyway. But he offered me a job, so that didn't work out. Yeah, so continuing the headmistresses and headmasters, Sister Gabrielle Mason of the St. Joseph Convent, and those teachers. One thing about the teachers, that they instilled discipline, boy, discipline. You had to walk on a road called discipline, and you stray from that, you're paid for straying. Suffer the consequences of your actions. While I was growing up, all students had to walk on a road called the straight and narrow, and when they strayed, the teachers used the leather belt. They used a leather belt to remind them where the road was again. They're talking about a time, a period, when the old African adage, it takes a village to raise a child, was manifested, actually existed. And just recently, Miss Chrissy, Depo's mother, passed away. And I mentioned how all the mothers will come together to nurture, to look over, and to guide the children in the neighborhood. That was wonderful. Cannot leave out, going back to the headmasters, Mr. J.W. Fletcher of the St. George's RC Boys School. Mr. Fletcher had a belt called the Conqueror. Boy, that Conqueror conquered a lot of fellas. Them fellas on the point and other areas, some bolu that came to the school and they playing bad. Boy, the belt conquered quite a number. Then one fella that I know, I can't remember, conquered the Conqueror. a guy surnamed Woods. Well, if your surname is Woods, no belt will have any kind of effect on you. Now, I recall when Prime Minister Eric Gary, again, I want to say that this man had a lot of good ideas. I have to give Jack his jacket. Sometimes I make comments and, I say it and I believe I talk the truth. When he brought those big yellow school buses to Grenada, my people ball, they say the Gary a madman. Those buses too big for the narrow streets in Grenada. You go bong zong people, kill people. But we had wonderful drivers. Drivers like a man called Raymond, rest in peace, and another called Masters, also passed away. Yes, they handled those buses very well. Masters mastered the yellow school bus, the big yellow school bus. And many children used to travel on that school bus to go 13 miles away from St. George's, way up the Brothers in St. John. And I can't recall an accident. God was good to us. And when I think of that big stone that came down in 1991 and fell on a bus, killed people, I often say to myself, it could have been us traveling up there to Guave in rainy weather, in sunshine, whenever the time or occasion was. We traveled, whatever time it was. But God spared our lives. I wrote a story about the one more bus. The one more bus that replaced the wooden buses. And actually it's featured in my new book. Relatively new because it's just recently I wrote that book, We Kinda Talk, which you can get on Amazon. The one more, so I will leave that topic about the one more bus out in this piece. But I'll tell you about Mr. Robert Fleming and his father, Mr. John Fleming. They were goldsmiths. Yes, I'm telling you the truth. Grenada had goldsmiths and they repaired watches. Their business was located on Hillsborough Street, close to White Dilemma. Yes, a man called Shorty Perrott. He made furniture in Paddock. And Mr. Hobby was noted for polishing furniture. Daddy Tio was a shoemaker on Grenville Street, and Mr. Brown was also a shoemaker on Grenville Street. Mr. Walker, another shoemaker, did his work on Lucas Street. During the 50s, 60s, and 70s, shoemakers were real shoemakers in every sense of the word. They made and repaired shoes. Whole sole and half sole were not uncommon words or terms. Auntie, who lived near Marisho Pasture, was a superb seamstress. Wap was a tailor. Mr. Jimmy Lewis owned a restaurant. Who remembers Bamboo Bar and Portofino? Who saw Derek Walcott's play Dream on Monkey Mountain when it came to Grenada? And of course, there are other names I can call, like names like Prenge, Brushback, Holly the Chief of Police, Bude, Strongman Bude, the Butcher, Mama Ed, Muffin Conqueror, Georgie Salab, Big Bertie, Los Howard, rest in peace, Tom Peace, Daya Marquez, Ted Walker, Mayor, the general on the football team, Mr. Paul Roberts, who is still alive, the great goalkeeper, Godzilla, who came from St. Vincent, and walked all over Grenada. Strong man. So what? Gordon Dandarat Ward, Bogo the referee, Papa Plug, Ox Johnson, Sampat, Seppi Monroe, Sequence. You remember Sequence? My brother Big George. Big Dog, Bull from Guave, the goalkeeper. Alistair Telesford, the great football player from River Road. He could have played in England for one of the Premier League teams. Yes. And, so we had some very, very good, talented footballers. Ben Roberts. Ben Roberts was a man who used to straighten out unruly boys. So those bad behaved boys was sent to Mr. Ben Roberts, and there was a term used, he straightened them out. They're playing bad? And And then we had, of course, Corporal Bartholomew. Lou Smith recently passed away. I have to mention him. Very talented man. I was glad I got an opportunity to tell him that when I met him in Lagoon Road, Coronel James Boulevard now called. And I told him how good and happy I was to know that he did so much for the Grenadian people. The same thing I told Jerry Romaine. We can't forget our people. And yes, the Corporal Bartholomew was involved with the Police Boys Club. Now, the Legion of Mary was very active, and I believe it's active still. Well, you can tell me. Marisho Pasture, situated on Park Lane, St. George, once the venue of international netball, and teams from Trinidad played. When I look at that era there, I said, how that happened, boy? How that happened? Big up the Grenadian netballers. And who can recall the time headers were taken from the Green Bridge near Queen's Park? When I tell people that, people said jump down from that bridge into the water because it was deep. And big waves used to come in, and surfing was popular, just as it was popular in parts of Guave. But in Guave, they used to call it lashing the wave. But surfing was big in Grenada one time. Yes. Who remembers Backstreet School, where Mr. Jerome McBannett was once the headmaster? Anybody reading this book ever took a dip in the spout? The spout, located in the Tantine area. Well, now a building stands there now, the Union Building, and that was our nice little beach. We used to bathe in the spout. When we get the bangings from the football game we played in Tantine, we headed for the spout and take a nice dip. We call it Bikini Beach, located near Tantine, as I said. And then, of course, Miami Beach, close to Melville Street, a nice little beach in the heart of town. That was days, boy. That was days. And the GBSS hostel boys can tell you about life in a hostel. Life in a hostel. Grenada had a boarding school. Yes. Just to mention, some of us can recall a very fast boat. The boat was called the Flying Fish. Dazzled Grenadians, boy. Dazzled them with its speed when it came to Grenada. And the time Mike Hawker, the Australian kite man, landed on the rocks near the hospital in St. George's during Uncle Gary's Easter Water Parade. Them days when bush was not allowed to grow in the cemeteries, and the prisoners were brought down to the cemeteries to clear the bush and make the place look nice. Anthony, Wendell, the Riggs, all you have to do is to add yours, and we good. God bless.